Hey everybody, welcome to another episode I was about to say of Steph, Fizer, Coleman, because I'm so excited. We're changing the name again.
It's the
called
SFC
show.
show.
I'm so excited. When I got turned on to Steph and her work, her illustration, but it's not just that. It's also she does some abstracts, but it's how she uses her sketchbooks. And she's a great teacher, but I mean, I didn't mean a but after that. Just pause. She's a great teacher as well. She is on the East Coast. I think you're in West Virginia. Is that right?
I am,
In
yeah.
West
Good
Virginia.
memory.
And we are polka dot girls today. We didn't mean to, but we worked it. Anyway, I am so jealous of her skills and her texture that she gets and just the fun she has. She just exudes joy. To me, her work is super joyful. So I'm super excited that we get to have Steph on, and she is going to talk to us about how she uses her sketchbooks. I have always lots of questions, and I'll try to get through them, but I always like to make sure that you guys get your questions in too. So I know that Steph's going to share her screen and we're going to look at some stuff there as well. But if I know you do children's books, you're an author and an illustrator, you are an educator, you teach people about right now you have the whole thing you're about to launch a course with or a series on children's book illustrators, and there's all this honest stuff that she's sharing, which I think is great. So I know I didn't cover everything, but can you give us a little bit of your background and a better intro than what I did?
Sure. I thought that was a great intro. I feel like I want to have you in my studio, just like saying nice things about me all the
I'll be your
time.
hype girl.
Yeah, just hang out, and when I'm having a bad painting day, just be like, you're awesome. I am a children's book illustrator, trying to be an author. That is new to me. I'm writing my first picture books right now. It is hard. So that's fun. I'm also an online art educator. So I teach obviously about sketchbook practice, which is like why we're here. And then I have a class. It's not really a class. We call it a portfolio development workshop. It's going to launch this fall. It's called Let's Make Picture Books. And it is for people who want to make picture books. It's really fun. I don't want to go on and on about it,
But
but
one thing I think is great is that you've done these illustrations. You use your sketchbooks for figuring out characters, like sometimes. So it actually is totally relevant. But the one thing you do I don't know why my brain isn't working. I didn't take my medicine this afternoon. The survey, you did a survey with children's book illustrators, and I actually also thought that was really so. Tell them about that, and then you can give them the spiel again at the end too. But I think if you want to do children's books, this course would be great.
Yeah. So this thing, Let's Make Picture Books. First of all, my vibe is obviously to just be really honest about being a children's book illustrator. I just feel like there's so many like shiny stars and unicorns around the idea of being a children's book illustrator. And I mean, with good reason. It's a wonderful thing to do. It's amazing, it's fulfilling, like it's a lot of fun. But I always make it a point to let everyone know like how much money you could make per book, if you will earn royalties from your kids' books, and if you will get rich off those royalties. And like the answer to that is for most people, no. For maybe like 3% of people, yes. Like they're rolling in royalties, and then everybody else is like getting like a $500 royalty check, if that, like that's a good day. So yeah, I always come from that place of just being really honest with everyone about like what is possible. And then Let's Make Picture Books is less about learning to illustrate like I illustrate and more about learning to illustrate how you illustrate. So instead of having, guided lessons that take you through a class, this one has workbooks. So we work in the class for 12 weeks. Every 4 weeks you get a workbook, and that workbook challenges you to do a lot of sketchbook stuff first. That's like make some messes, do some exploration, learn what you really want to say with your illustration. And then make the art. So yeah, I'm always just like on a soapbox about sketchbooking, I
And you've
guess.
done tons of children's books. And a couple of years ago, I don't know exactly how many because I've um, watched a whole bunch of YouTubes, which I know are out of order, um, but you actually kind of got you were getting burned out maybe on a certain style, and so then your sketchbooks really came into a
It's
different.
true.
They had a different purpose, and I think that's something we all can relate to. Is sometimes we just need to use them for uh, I don't
Yeah.
know, getting some different kind of fuel in the fire. But
Yeah, like it really, so gosh, I went through a couple of rounds of burnout with kids books, just because I had a hard time saying no when I first started like really getting consistent book projects that were things I loved, illustrating animals, drawing birds, drawing ocean stuff. Like I loved those things. I was so excited. Kids Steph would have loved these books and that felt so good. So I just kept saying yes to everything. And then eventually I just kind of got to this point where like it felt like Groundhog Day. Like I was like, oh my gosh, this is like my sixth ocean book. Like I can't think of like a different way to draw a coral reef. And like there's only like so many ways I can draw this whale. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I gotta do something different. And at that point I was working very digital. I was, doing most of my work in Photoshop and I was working long hours. And my body was like, what is happening? It's like my whole left arm was just like, I'm gonna go on strike if we keep doing this. So I kind of knew I needed to change something. I was really sick of being on my Cintiq all the time. So I was like, you know what, man, let's just like do a fun sketchbook because I had always, of course, like sketched on paper, but as part of my process for doing books and, greeting cards and stuff like that. But it had been like years since I had a sketchbook that was just for like messing around.
mm,
So I started doing that maybe like 5 or 6 years ago. And that was like a big turning point for me. Like I learned again that I like using like, markers and pencils and paint and like, I was able to kind of see like what I liked on paper and then figure out like, okay, well, like for illustration, how does that work? Because I know I don't want to do like fully traditional for kids books because I got to edit and all that stuff, and I would rather be able to Photoshop it. So then I was able to like, say, okay, like here's what I love in my sketchbooks. Here's what I know in Photoshop. Like, how do these two things work together? And now I have like a style that kind of like brings like the best of both worlds. Like I get like the spontaneity of like some analog work, but I can still edit things if I need to. So like that's really nice. And I wouldn't, I mean, I tried to get there without, a sketchbook. I tried to, find an easier style and a different style, and I just couldn't. It took like being willing to get in a sketchbook and make some stuff that wasn't pretty at first, to like really understand um, what I wanted from my creative practice going forward. So go
what about
sketchbooks.
what about materials? So, like, did you already have those like Karen Dash things or different markers, or was this
No.
something you were like trying as you went?
So, funny story about that is that, like every artist, I had stacks and stacks of materials. And then at some point a few years ago, I was like, man, like everything you're doing is mostly digital. So, like, you really don't need all this stuff. Like, you need some sketchbooks, a couple kinds of pencils, and then I had some Neocolors that I was using just to like sketch with because that feels nice to me. But then when I decided I wanted to get back into a sketchbook practice again, I was like, oh man, I gotta buy this, like all this stuff that like I gave away. I'm gonna have to buy it again. Like, so when I started out, I was watching a lot of Patreon. I was watching like I think like Emma Carlisle and like those people. So I would be like, okay, man, let's try some luminance colored pencils and see what happens. Like, let's try some Ecoline brush pens and see what happens. And then I was, slowly able to find the stuff that I liked and kind of like focus on that instead of worrying about like, what everybody else was using and doing and all that stuff. So yeah, it's until I just like buy everything again.
So
It's
that
so funny.
5 years ago, when you decided you were like, okay, I'm going to go back analog, and you even talk about this in one of the videos, you're like, I used my non-dominant hand, which is
Right.
that would be your right hand because you're
Yeah, I'm
left-handed.
right-handed. Yeah.
Um, and so it's like you were drawing with that other, and sometimes I guess could be out of the need because your arm is burning, but
True.
it's I think it's really that's even a small thing that we can do. Sometimes I think
Yeah.
using a different tool that we're not used to,
Mhm.
or a brush that's all funky. Some you have this broken brush that you
I
use the back
do.
end of it
I
as a
do.
tool. And I think, maybe maybe you're like, I'm not gonna buy anymore. I already gave this one broke. Now I have two. I don't know. But I think that that also is really interesting that you're utilizing the things that are there. You're investing in some other tools or some other materials, but um, lots of times it looks like you're using a limited palette, and you also push through to some. You love blue and orange, which I went to
I do.
Auburn, so that's blue and orange. I love when you say that.
I
I'm a blue and
do.
orange girl too. But you will still do stuff in like purple and yellow, which is I think your evil
I hate it
colors.
so much. I do. I hate it so much. I don't know why I do it. Every, because like some days, like you know that you need a challenge when you show up to make art, and on those days, I choose purple and yellow. So I'm like, you don't like these, but I mean, I don't like like pure hued like purple and yellow, but I like a yellow ochre and like a dark moody purple. Like those are fine. But yeah, I have found that when I started my sketchbook practice, it was very helpful for me to like limit things. Because we get overwhelmed, if you've got 10,000 things to choose from, you're just gonna sit there and like, oh, like I don't know. But if you have, two pencils and a tube of paint, then you have to like, okay, what can I do with this? And I've always found that when you have those limitations, like at first, you like if you're listening right now, you might think like, oh, like that sounds like that's gonna not be fun at all. But then you find out that it is. Because if there's something that you want to do and you don't have like the material that you would normally use, then you figure out, okay, like what can I do here? I thin this paint down. Can I use this to paint with? Like what can I use for a texture? Like you figure out so many things that you wouldn't have figured out if you were using like 10,000 different materials. So like just like any sort of limitations you can give yourself, like maybe you're just using a brush that day. Maybe you're just using one brush. Maybe it's just, one colored pencil. Maybe you limit your color palette. For a long time, I would choose a color palette and stick with it for like a week or two, no matter what I was drawing in my sketchbook. So like it didn't matter if the bird wasn't those colors, we were going to use those colors and like figure out how this worked. And it was a really good exercise. It just made everything so much easier for me. When I was, when you're starting out and you're building that new habit, you have to just really get out of your own way. And for me, that just means like making things really easy. So if I had my sketchbook out on my drawing desk back there and I already had my markers chosen and my pencils chosen and everything is just there, then when I come in my studio in the morning, I'm like, oh, okay, like I'll do 15 minutes in my sketchbook and see what happens. And there's no struggle, there's no feeling bad, there's no stressing out over it. It's already ready and inviting you.
So that makes a good point too, is that so limited tools, limited time, and then
Mhm.
sometimes when we're working in, you work with water soluble things lots,
Mhm.
or and so sometimes the pages get wet and you can't keep going. So in 15 minutes, you need a different book.
Mhm.
Do you have now for people who are just starting, that may be like, oh my gosh, how many sketchbooks do I have to buy? But for those of us who are right in the middle and we have multiples, is that how many do you have kind of going at a time?
So many. I counted before we started because I figured you were gonna ask. And I have seven right now. But I don't draw, I think I'm weirdly superstitious. So like if I have a bad day in a sketchbook, I'm like, okay, you're gonna go back on the shelf. We're gonna pick a different different one instead and see if we can just like, loosen up the vibes in here a little bit. So I do that a lot. I used to be really like, I used to have like a sketchbook for birds and one for animals and one for flowers. And now I just have like a stack of sketchbooks and I just swap around. Like if I'm waiting on something to dry, then I'll switch to a different sketchbook. Sometimes if I'm waiting on something to dry, I'll just grab a little, I have somewhere back here, a little stack of like 4x5 paper that I cut down to size. And sometimes I'll just grab one of those and then just, do a little painting or use the last of my paint or whatever. And then I will like stick it in a sketchbook or like tape it to a page or something. But, but I mean, you don't need 7 sketchbooks. It's just.
But you might need more than one if
I
you're
would
going to
say
use
get
something.
2, honestly. Yeah.
Okay.
If you're using anything like gouache or like watercolors, shoot, even acrylics, you have to wait a couple minutes for them to dry sometimes. Even markers, like the Eco Line markers that I like, they're very like juicy markers. So like you gotta wait a minute before you start trying to put a colored pencil over that, or you were going through the page. It's happening.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's nice to have 2 to work on. And if you're working on multiple things at the same time, like if you've got a couple of paintings or a couple of illustrations or drawings or whatever, you feel less precious about this one right here because you can just bounce over here for a second and then bounce back, and you just don't get so like laser focused on this has to be perfect or the world will end. It's just a nice little break to bounce back and forth and not get so uptight, which is what I'm always trying to fight against because I'm uptight as a person. I'm an anxious little bunny. So when it comes to my sketchbook practice, I'm always having to think of like things like the non-dominant hand thing, things like, using tools. Like I never sketch, like if I'm just like sketching, like if I sat down and I was like, oh, I want to sketch chickadee, I would probably pick up a Neocolor because it affords me less control than picking up a pencil. And like, I used to be a mechanical pencil sketcher and it's just, I'm just too tight with those. So if anything that I can do to just like loosen up and, let it be more fun and free, like that's what I'm doing. But I'm always fighting against like who I am as a person.
Well, and I think that that's a really good point. And I think for a lot of us are designers and we're, in having a sketch, we may not think of ourselves as illustrators even, or it may be something that we've developed over time, but most of the time we're working digitally and it is a place to have more, the sketchbook is a place for more exploration and not something that has to be so perfect, which I think is great. I love, took a bunch of time this weekend and just watched a whole bunch of her videos on YouTube, which I will share the links of her YouTube channels. But it's not all perfect. She's like, we were talking before and I'm like, oh no, stop. You can see when someone else is going too far, but then she does it goes okay. And but it's good that I can see it in someone else because I obviously can't see it in myself sometimes. So I think it's good to watch, but I also love that you keep those in because it helps us to know that everything that comes out of your hand isn't just this most amazing, beautiful thing. And that it's nice to see the struggle, that it's not just me, because I think sometimes we look at people on YouTube or wherever, and it's like, oh my gosh, these sketchbooks are amazing. And they are amazing.
They are.
But I think they're just flipping over some of the pages that maybe aren't so great, or they didn't show the bad sketchbook or something. So what would you say to somebody who doesn't have a sketchbook practice and they say that one of 2 things, they can't draw or they don't have time?
So the time one is easy because everyone has 15 minutes. Like it's not that much time. Either if you have a dedicated space like I do, have your stuff sitting out so that you can just come to your space, set a timer for 15 minutes, go for it. If you don't have that, keep all of your sketchbook stuff in a box, in a bag, whatever, so that when you have your 15 minutes, you can sit down, get it out on the kitchen table, do it, you know? And also, just a side note, I saw Troy in the comments say that beautiful sketchbooks are meant to be beautiful sketchbooks, like they're meant to be works of art. And I think he is 100% right. That's what I think too. And I think that that is absolutely valid, to have a sketchbook that is meant to be a work of art. I think that's wonderful. I just don't think it's for me.
Those are all blank. I'm like, oh, this was a really nice sketchbook. I'll save that for when
Yeah.
I'm ready.
Well, see, I'm the opposite though. I buy beautiful sketchbooks and then I just make big messes in them. And I'm like, well, that's what it's there for. Like
It
the
is.
sketchbook exists to hold art. It's not going to judge the art that you put in the sketchbook, So like, just make art in the sketchbook. Like, that's what it's for. It's meant for that. Make your sketchbook happy, put some stuff in it.
Yeah.
Like, let that sketchbook be fulfilled.
So, what would you
It's
say to somebody who
purpose.
says that they can't draw? Because I think it's really about, to me, it's about seeing, and you don't have to
Yeah,
make, if you can make a circle or you can make a letter B, then you can draw, I think.
absolutely. I mean, I think that it depends on like what you want as an artist. If I have been developing an abstract painting sketchbook practice over the last like few months, and you don't need to know how to draw to do that. All you have to do is figure out how you like the paints you like, the materials you like, and how you like to make marks on a page. And that's it. You can make art. You don't need to know how to do that. But if you think that you can't draw, the thing that is going to help you learn how to draw is, wait for it, actually drawing. So like get in your sketchbook, do your 15 minutes. Know that if you're new to drawing, if you're new to making art, it's probably gonna suck at first. I mean, it is. You're not going to be able to get the things that are in your head out onto the paper. And like some days that's going to feel really annoying. But I think that every single time that you sit down to make some art in your sketchbook, you're doing yourself a favor as an artist. You're going to grow in skill, you're going to grow in confidence. And like I always make it a point to find something that I like in everything that I do, every piece of art that I
Mm.
do. So if I have the worst day ever in my sketchbook, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, am I even an artist? Like, why do people pay me for art? Like, this makes no sense. I will say, okay, like, what's good about this? And sometimes it's like a smudge of color in a corner. Sometimes it's like an eyebrow. Sometimes it's, a finger on a character or something. Like, even the tiniest thing, though, that helps me show up the next time
Mm.
instead of looking at that sketchbook page and being like, oh, I suck, like I'm no good, everybody else is so much better than me. Like if I'm doing all the negative self-talk, then I'm not going to want to come back the next day. I'm not going to want to keep trying. But if I'm finding those little moments of like yes, I really like that. And that also helps because when you make note of those little things that you like, you're tucking that into the little folds of your brain, and then they'll be available the next time you make some art. You remember, oh yeah, I really liked that pretty peachy pink color, so I'm gonna try that
Mm.
again. I really liked that brush stroke, so like I'm gonna try that again. It's just such a nice practice to just be nice to yourself and to your art, you
So, I
know?
had that question way down. So, I'm going to skip to
Sorry.
question number. No, I'm good. This is how way I think I have ADD. So, we're good. We can skip all around. How do you deal with making bad art? And is your internal voice nice or mean?
So I would say that like naturally, unfortunately, my internal voice is kind of a meanie. It's like kind of a meanie. Just I'm by nature cynical as a just like a person, so I'm always kind of like trying to balance that out with being a little bit less cynical. But definitely the tendency for me is to like be not mean to myself, but just me maybe like not super nice. So it's taken years of practice to stop doing that, and I'll still catch myself doing it sometimes and be like, oh, stop that. Like my general rule for me, especially with, my art and judging my art is would I say that to a friend?
Yeah,
If I wouldn't say that to a friend, I have no business saying it to myself either. So I'm like, would you say that to a friend? No. Okay. And then now let's find something that is good about this. And
I love that.
it really just changes the whole perspective of the thing. Like if you've had the worst art day, art week, art month, ever, if you just take a second to be like, okay, like this one thing, I like this, like I like this. And it just feels so nice to just, you know, be nice to yourself, be nice to your art, and it makes you want to come back and work and get better at the thing. So
I love that. So I don't know if you want to share your screen. You want to show them
yeah,
some
of course.
stuff, and then I can keep asking some questions. So this is just a personal me being nosy. If you were going to a meeting or you had to go to a doctor's appointment or something, and would you carry your sketchbook and a couple of little things?
So I wrote a blog post about this once. This is like a two-parter. First of all, I just think that waiting rooms are the worst places on earth. Like, I don't love a waiting room. And when I'm in a waiting room, I'm normally just gonna like put my AirPods in and listen to like an audiobook or something and pretend I'm not there. So I don't usually bring anything. Now, I will have like one of those tiny little like moleskin sketchbooks.
Mm-hmm.
I keep that tucked in my purse so that if I'm feeling, inspired and I want to scribble something down.
Wait, you got to go back because I got to ask you a question about that. I mean, you're gonna have to. You
Okay.
can just go wherever but
There.
this to the owl, yeah, if possible.
Okay.
Okay, so well, I don't want to interrupt you for finishing the rest of what you were saying.
Go. Oh, I'll finish okay, and then we'll talk about the owl that's on the screen right now. I, as far as like drawing on location, I love watching other people do it. Like, show me YouTube videos all day long of people packing up their kids and going out and whatever. But like if it's me, I really don't like it. I don't like it. I felt bad about it for so long because I was like, oh, like you're not like a real sketchbook artist because you don't want to like, go draw, at the park or in the woods or whatever. But I just, it's different strokes for different folks. And like, I would rather be in my studio. So it's more common for me to like take a bunch of photos of stuff and then to
Mm.
like write some notes in my notes app because we all know that like a photo is not the same as actually like looking at the thing. So like if I take a photo, then I might make some notes about like, oh, I thought this texture was really interesting, or I thought these colors were amazing, or here's what the color looked like, or here's how I think the color, how I could make the color. So I do that. I just, like I said, it's just not for me. So if y'all don't like drawing on
No,
location, it is totally fine.
yeah, I think that that's good to know, and that it's just the permission again that you don't always have to do it the way other people are doing it. You have to
Yeah.
do the way that you're going to actually show up and make work. So one of the questions I had was, how when do you take it out of the sketchbook? Like, how do you know? So in on just on Christmas Day in
2020.
2020, you were drawing this owl. Was the owl was it for a book, or was it you had an idea of
No,
this bigger thing? You just came up with this super cute owl and then you
it
made
was.
this.
Yeah, it was for nothing. It was Christmas, and I'm sure we were in between things for the day. Like we had done like Christmas morning stuff, and then we were doing afternoon stuff with one of our families. So I was just kind of like putzing around, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna go draw for a little bit. And I didn't even really know what I was gonna draw. But I was really into, and I'm still into, negative space. So I did this owl and I was like, oh gosh, like he's really something. Like I love this dude. So I was like, yeah, let's like make a thing. And then I mean, it took, a few days to like make an illustration. I sketched out my idea for like these owls like flying over this little snowy village. And then a lot of this illustration, this was also when I was figuring out my analog and
Mm.
digital illustration style. So this was one of the illustrations that I used to learn how I wanted to do that and what worked for me. So this was a lot of like painting, like everything was painted on paper and then scanned into Photoshop and then edited and then assembled and recolored and all that stuff. So yeah, it was just a feeling with that. Now like with kids book stuff, I'm gonna go back to my own slides here.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
this is like something that I would do for kids books. Like this is like how I would work for kids books. And this is another example of what I would do with a kids book where I know starting out, like with this one is the book was called One Day This Tree Will Fall. And it's the story of a Douglas fir and all of the life that it supports throughout its life. And then
Mm.
after it falls and, becomes part of the forest floor. It's really beautiful. It had all these animals in it. So I spent probably like a month or so just filling up this sketchbook with different animals that were going to be in there. And that's how I've always used sketchbooks in this really specific way. But then with something like these owls that I have over here, this was just an accident. I was just sketching, just doing fun stuff, and then was like, oh, this could be a thing.
Well,
So,
another thing I love is that it is a limited palette over there on the left hand side, and you
Mhm.
use your shadow color, a weird shadow color. But I love the weird shadow colors that you choose because it just sometimes shadows are weird colors and it helps it to that is one of the joy things. I'm like, did she only have that seafoam green and she just plopped it on? Or she's like, I'm gonna make the shadow fun with seafoam green, like
I would say both. I would say like during this time, I was probably working with like that. That's probably like a Prussian blue. And then the greenish color, I forget which one it is. It's a luminance pencil. So I was probably working with those and the yellows above that. So that's what I had at the time. But also like one of the fun things about illustrating for kids is that like you can make it weird like that, and it's
yeah.
acceptable. Now I'm just regretting that I didn't carry it over into the illustration. It just made them like, I think that I intended to, but then like once I got into the illustration, I was like, oh, this doesn't really work the same way that like, it doesn't feel the same
Well,
as it did.
I also love his determined eye in the
I
sketch. And then you
know.
you were like, nope, that looks a little too
I
hard.
got rid of it because every owl that I draw in my sketchbook looks cranky. It's a thing. It's a thing. So when I did them, I was like, oh, let's make them look like this is like a
They
peaceful
look
sort of
beautiful. They're
snowy scene. It's a different vibe.
but it's a good exercise for us to see, oh, here's what it started as. Even you have the little houses and the other little circles that in your mind I know are something
Yeah.
else, but and then as it I don't know, transforms into the final piece, we see how some of the things change and we see how maybe a decision was made so that he didn't look so cranky. Anyway, I think that's great.
So many cranky owls in my sketchbook.
Orange and blue again, we got it. And I
I
love these little
know.
dogs.
So these are for this was from like last month. I'm working on developing a book idea that has dogs and a couple of dogs. So there's like an older sort of grump of a big dog and then this little sort of like yappy crazy sort of sort of dog is his counterpart. So I'm working on those now. Um birds.
And you draw birds a lot as just like a
So
go-to,
much.
right?
Yeah,
What
so
is it
much.
about birds
Just
that you love?
so I've just always loved birds. Just I don't remember like not like noticing birds a lot, probably more than the average person. And when I was starting out in kids' books a million years ago, in like 2015, it feels like a million years now. I was trying to like find my style because I felt like the work I was doing then was just very like cookie cutter. It was very much kind of like this is a kids' book portfolio, and it didn't really have a voice or anything. So I decided I was going to do a weekly drawing project because back then we weren't all crazy trying to draw for 100 days in a row.
Right.
Um, no shame because I've done that one too. I did that one twice, but back then I was doing just a weekly project. I called it 52 Birds because I'm very clever. And I just decided that I was going to draw one bird every week for the entire year. I really think that I picked them though because like the shapes are easy. If you know how to draw one bird, you know how to draw the rest of the birds.
Mm.
You just have to vary the size of the body and the shape of the head and whatever. But if you have like the general idea of how to draw a bird, you can draw a bird. So I figured they were simple enough that it would not feel intimidating to me, and that it would give me a really good base to try to figure out like who I was as an artist. And it actually worked. I spent that year doing those bird illustrations. And then at the end of the year, the cool thing about a project like that is when you look at them all together at the end, you can really see the progression of like, I didn't know what I was doing here. And then I had totally figured it out by the end. So like that was lovely. And I sent them to my agent at the time, my kids book agent, and was like, hey, like I've been doing these, like, what do you think? And she suggested, of course, that I do some full scenes because you have to like show that you can draw backgrounds and interaction and motion and all that stuff. So I took some birds and I developed a few illustrations with them. And I started like within like a couple of months, I started getting the kinds of books I really wanted to do. So like I was like, yes. And then I just really love drawing birds. So I just kept at it. It was all digital for a long time. And then when I started my sketchbook practice, it was the easiest thing to start with. This runner duck that's on the screen on the right-hand side was in one of my first sketchbooks. And it's a really comfortable subject matter. You already know how to draw it. And now you get to figure out like, okay, like what materials do I like and how do I do textures on a page and like, all this fun stuff. So I just love birds.
Well, and a lot of it, so and looking from left to right, and I just know because I've watched a whole bunch of you painting. Um, but I think it's interesting is sometimes you're just starting with these kind of big
Blobs.
shapes. Yeah, blobs.
They're just blobs.
And then you're adding something else. And I think it's a way that for me and the way my brain works, it's a relief because you can connect with a line where there wasn't maybe the color and it still makes
Yeah.
sense. And they're just way more fun than trying this super tight. But I mean,
Yeah.
the duck looks totally different than the other birds, like he's taller and he's so cute and like smiling, looks like he's about to wink at me. But like,
It looks like he's about to get into something.
so if you've done, so if you were doing one bird for a whole week, right? Like, like say it was a
uh,
duck. Was it a duck?
yeah.
You did a duck a week?
Oh, well, so when I was doing
I mean,
52 birds, it was a different bird every week. And I was
right.
only doing one drawing a week.
Oh, okay. Cause I was like, did you do 7 ducks or
No,
15?
I
What?
wasn't.
Okay.
Yeah, it wasn't a daily drawing. See, we're
Okay.
also broken by like by Instagram drawing projects that are like, you will do this every day. Like,
Okay. That makes so then you ended up, but
yeah.
you ended up with 52 different birds.
Mhm. Yeah,
Okay.
I made a list. I love a list again to like, you got to give yourself some limitations because there are something like 10,000 birds in the world, which is too many to choose from. So instead, I think I just like maybe did a Google search, like a Google image search for like birds, and then just was like, oh, I like this one, I like this one, and then I, chose like birds that I knew from my own backyard and, noticing them. So had a list, and then by the end of it, I had 52 different birds.
So in,
Um,
in that one project, what kinds of things were you did you have an idea of, oh, I'm going to do birds and I'm going to experiment with blank? Or was it
mhm.
just more free form, like I'm just drawing birds and we're going to see where it goes? Like,
It was really because like I already had a way that I worked. This was in Photoshop at the time. I was still a digital girl. So I already had a way that I worked, and I was kind of thinking of that. Plus, one of my favorite illustrators is Charlie Harper. He was
mm,
a mid-century illustrator who just like simplified everything
mhm.
in the most amazing way. Like I saw an exhibition of his work like 3 or 4 years ago, and like you just seeing like just the simplicity and the perfection of the curves and all that stuff. Like it was just so I really wanted to simplify my own illustration work. Like I mean, that's a thread that goes from way back then when I started that project to now is like, how can I simplify things? Because I don't just
Mm.
overthink everything. I also over illustrate everything. Like it takes practice to learn how to do less in your art. And I think that so often people don't respect how hard that is. I didn't.
It
Like
is hard for
I
sure.
didn't. So yeah, when I was doing the 52 Birds project, I was very much just kind of keeping in mind like the simplicity of Charlie Harper, how I could bring that into my own work. And then, as I've been a sketchbook artist, like that comes up over and over again is how can I simplify things? How can I make this fun? How can I make this easier? And that was part of, like these other 2 pages of birds that we're looking at on the screen right now. I just, like you said, I a lot of times will just go in and make blobs and then we'll turn that into a bird. And this is something that I like teach my students in like my kids book class is like figure out what the bare minimum of details are to identify a thing. So like I know that a bird has to have a beak, an eye, 2 legs, a tail, and 2 wings. I can take any shape and make that into a bird as long as it has those things. The human eye is going to be like, oh, it's a bird. Like it doesn't matter if I just drew a triangle on the page or if I just like threw a blob of paint down, I can turn that into a bird. And it's such a fun challenge. And because you're not drawing something like directly from a reference photo, like you might like this page that has like the blue tits on it on the left. Like, of course, I looked at a reference to understand like where the markings go on the bird, what color is its head, all that stuff. But it wasn't like I was trying to be realistic with it. So I have a lot more room for play because I'm not saying like I have to draw this bird exactly as it exists in the wild. I'm like, no, I'm just going to draw some shapes and put some lines together and you're going to know what it is. Because,
But
like
that's
it
even a
sort of makes
challenge,
sense.
especially for somebody so detailed or like a lot of designers are OCD on
Mhm.
certain things. And so then it can be hard. And it sounds like you fit right in there with us. And then so to really abandon that and we have the basics, I'm not going to be so uptight, but that's what gives it such life, which is something I love. Paul had a great question. Paul's a book designer, an awesome book designer. He does
Oh.
adult books and then he also has done kids books. And one of the things that he has um, struggled with when he's working with illustrators, or maybe not, but it's something. When do you plan for the text? As a book designer, I found many
Hmm.
illustrators struggle with leaving. You've got to stop moving because I want to see
Sorry.
all these things and I have to read his thing. Um, as a book designer, I found many illustrators struggle with leaving the necessary negative space and extending backgrounds far enough if needed for bleeds for the wider layout and concern. Like when do you plan if these were for a book, how would you then, I mean, obviously you've done enough books that you know how to do this, but what would you
Um,
give as somebody as a, because that is a
well,
challenge.
so Paul, you will be happy to know that I do teach my students to leave space for text. So, so I have got your back out there. I build the space for text in when I do the sketches. So sometimes publishers will send the page layouts with the text already, blocked out. I can move it around if I need to. So that lets me know I need to leave like this much space around this. And I do it at the sketch stage. I just go ahead and take care of it. I also go ahead and set up my bleed, like my margins and everything at the sketch phase. So I know what everything needs to look like, how much needs to be on the page, how much is going off. Um, I like to be prepared, man. Like I don't want to have to go back and do stuff later. Like I don't want to mess it up and then have to like go back and fix it. But
Do you
yeah,
think
I
about the
just
gutter too? Like what's
oh yeah,
covering
of
over the
course.
gutter? Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I always pay attention to the gutter and how close I can be to it, how much of it is swallowed up by the binding. Yeah, I always keep it in mind. And just I mean, I've been doing it so long now. I'm just like, yeah, it's easy. I always did it. I'm sure that in my first couple of books, like I really just was super anxious about getting it all right, making sure that like, I had enough bleed and I wasn't putting things in the gutter and like so yeah, I try to be
But
prepared
maybe Paul
and
could provide a little dummy at where the text
yeah.
is and then
Honestly, like, I think also like a lot of especially new illustrators, I think that they're afraid to ask questions. I
hmm.
think that like they feel like they are not going to be viewed as professional if they say, where do I put the text? Or can you I remember the first book that I did, I asked them for a template with that had the bleed blocked in and the line for the gutter because I was doing it myself in Photoshop and I was afraid I wasn't getting it right. And
Right.
I just said, "Hey guys, like, do you have a template? Like, can you guys send me something?" And they sent me something and it was really helpful. So I guess it could be helpful to just, ask the illustrator if they need a template or layout or anything like that, or if they feel comfortable. That's less work for everyone in the end, I guess.
I love these. And I love that you're filling up the page and these are thinner paper, but you don't care. You're like,
I
I'm
don't
okay.
care. I really don't.
I
These
love
are
that.
um these are Moleskine blank Kaye notebooks. So the paper is super thin. It's not really meant to be a sketchbook. I've used them for years for kids books. So like when I start a kids book, I'll usually grab one of these and then I'm usually sketching with like a colored pencil or a Neocolor, so I don't have to worry about it. But then sometimes I do marker like this and it bleeds through, but I think it's kind of fun to be able to see like the ghosts of like
Yeah.
the ghost of the birds who are on the next page.
I love that. Okay, keep going. You can keep flipping now. I just
Okay.
wanted to be able to look too.
All right. You ask
So
questions, I'll flip.
these are multiple different uh mediums,
Mhm.
right? As you're doing these.
Yeah.
I love these birds. These would make such great like stuffed animals.
They would. They would.
So cute.
Yeah, I found with my sketchbook practice, again, like I get uptight like anyone does, or like myself. I get uptight like myself. So for me, it's really good to switch materials and, switch brushes and try different things. Like this one, I was drawing, I have some, I think these are Ecoline liquid watercolors, like the
Mm-hmm.
bottles.
Mm-hmm.
And the bottles come with a little dropper. So I was just drawing with the dropper instead of like trying to use like a brush or, a pen, like a stylus or anything like that. And it helps to just like freshen things up and loosen things up and keep you from feeling like, oh, I have to draw this exactly as it is. It just, I would honestly say that like, I don't even know, probably like 80% of my sketchbook is just like messy stuff. And
Those are
then
so
maybe like
cute.
like 20% of my sketchbook is like stuff that I would be like, yes, I would hang this on my wall, or like I would, sell this and like it would be fine. But yeah, most of it's just messy.
So like these, are you
Mhm.
working out these for a book or are these just you playing?
So this is from my polar bear sketchbook.
I
I don't
love
I
this one.
I honestly don't know how this happened. I was just I think that I had some paint because I started the polar bear sketchbook in 2021. It's not finished yet. I still have maybe like a quarter of the book left to go. But I think I just had some green paints that I got, and I was like, I'm gonna do something with this. And I had a new sketchbook. And what came out was like a negative space polar bear with a green background. And I was like, oh, this is fun. I like this guy. So then I just thought like, well, I'll just keep drawing polar bears. And at first it was this character, like the same polar bear, just in different, places and doing things. And then as it's gone over, 3 years now, I will just try different things, or just try different materials. Like this one on the left is an Inktense block that I broke in half and dipped in water and used it to create the shape of the polar bear, like the negative space around it. And
Mm-hmm.
then on the other side, I used ink and my little halfy paintbrush that you were mentioning earlier. I have a paintbrush that I actually cut it intentionally. I cut the handle
Oh,
in half. Um, just because again, I needed something new.
mm,
So sometimes, and I highly recommend this, sometimes when something feels weird in our art, we think to ourselves, I need to go buy something.
mm.
I need a new colored paint. I need a new brush. I need that thing that other artist is using that works so well for them. And then you get it and you're like, oh, it doesn't really, it's not that great for me. So instead, I've tried to get in the habit of just looking at what I have and seeing what I can do. So in this case, I was like, well, I'd like to have a little bit less control. And I don't want to buy like a long handled brush because it just doesn't work for like my sketchbook. I'm 5'4". I'm not that far away from my desk.
You're
Like,
tall to me.
yeah, like I draw standing up, like with my desk lowered down, but still, like a long handled brush wouldn't work. So I was like, oh, let's just try to, grab the pliers and cut this brush in half. And it's awesome. I love that brush. I've actually lost it. I was like digging through my studio, like, and I have like a neat studio. How did I lose it? Like, I was like combing through everything. I'm like, where's my half brush? Like, where's it at?
Did you
I'll find it one
find
day.
it?
I did not find it yet. I don't want to do another one though. I don't want to hurt another one unless I have to. But I will because I love it. It's just so fun. It's just so fun. So yeah, I'm just gonna
So like
keep.
this, like what happens to these experiments or studies after, like, because the polar bear, is it, because it's not, I know the sketchbook's not finished. You're going back to it, but is that a story you're creating or a character you're creating, or is,
Not
how do you
really.
know?
It's almost at this point just like a comfort thing, like the birds are.
Mm,
Just that I filled up 2/3, well, no, probably 3/4 of the sketchbook with different polar bear, sketches and illustrations in different, ways. So I feel really comfortable drawing them. And I know that if I'm, having a crappy art day or I just want to draw something really quickly, this is a good way to do that. I know that I can just show up and fill up a couple pages of this and it'll feel really nice. And who knows, like maybe one day this is a story for a kid's book, and then that's the thing about your sketchbook is that like so often like I will look back through my sketchbooks and I will see like the little breadcrumbs of an
mm,
idea that became a thing or like a shift in my style or the shift in the way I see things. And I didn't know it at the time. I didn't know, like, sometimes you do. Sometimes you do something and you're like, oh, this is a thing. And you get this big zing, but sometimes you don't even really notice it. And it just
mm.
kind of, it just kind of passes you by. And then it suddenly gets like worked into the way that you create art. And you flip back through and you're like, oh, like this started like 2 years ago. Like, you're like, I thought that I just came up with this, but now I can see, like the journey from this little like mistake that turned into like, something that is really lovely now. So
But I
that's part
think,
of the sketchbook
have you
magic.
ever seen Emma Carlisle, her sketchbooks? She does like
Yeah.
this. Yeah, I would buy that. I have, that's my Christmas present my sister always gives me. I was like, that, I would love that as, I mean, it's not even a story, it's just your sketchbooks. Anyway, I would like to
Maybe
have that
one
on my
day.
shelf.
Maybe one day.
Anyway, it's cool because I like to see the way you're making marks and how you're drawing the same thing but different. And anyway, it's neat. So one question was about scenes. Do you ever work in your sketchbook in scenes or complete compositions? Because some people in this series, they finish a piece in their sketchbook
Sure.
and they might do a little bit of digital work, but it puts a lot of pressure on me. But some of these seem like, I love that little mouse. Oh,
I know. He's
super
cute.
cute.
He's a favorite everywhere. He's gonna have to be in a book one day, I think.
Yeah.
He's he's a favorite. I very rarely do scenes in my sketchbook. I think that a lot of that is because I was a digital illustrator
Mm,
first. And I just don't think that I have like that tendency to feel like I need to have like a completed anything in my
mm-hmm.
sketchbook. It's more common for me to do like what you see here, where I just like fill up a page with like mushrooms or bugs or little flowers, like birds.
The top two
Um,
seem like scenes, though. So sometimes,
yeah, like sometimes, but like it's very rarely my intention to, not that I don't. I mean, we've already seen things in here that are more scenes. This is from my abstract sketchbooks that I started. And
hmm,
those are more like little like abstract landscapes. And I think that they tend to be more, like completed things with like backgrounds and whatever. But with kids'
yeah,
book
those are
stuff,
beautiful.
yeah, like with kids' book stuff, I don't really, Yeah, I don't want to say I'm lazy because that sounds negative. It's just, I know that with my illustration work, I'm gonna do like the assembling part in Photoshop. So I know that my sketchbooks are really just like mining for like ideas and textures and color combinations and layers and shapes. And just like ways of being looser and more expressive and, freer than I would be if I was just still drawing everything in Photoshop. Which like no shame if you do that. Like that's awesome. But it wasn't for me anymore.
Yeah. So and you also date everything. Why is that important for
I
you?
do. I just think that number one, it just kind of helps me kind of remember like where I was in my life when I was drawing this. Like
Mm,
it gives me context of like, like what was happening, what was going on, how was I kind of feeling around this time. And I think that's lovely. But I also think that it's really just lovely to see the progression of your work,
mhm.
to be able to look back and be like, oh gosh, like this was 2019 and like, I loved this so much, but now I see like how much I've grown. It's even like going through all my sketchbooks and taking all the photos for these slides was really interesting because I really got to see how my art has changed over the last few years
Mm.
from when I started my
These
sketchbook
are, oh my
practice.
gosh. These are like super stunners. Love these. Love these. Love these.
I love these too. I love these too. I've been, like I said earlier, I've been sort of like dabbling in abstract stuff for like a few months. And I keep like coming back to like these like flower
Oh,
ideas.
they
And
are
then I'll be like, I love
gorgeous.
this. This is so good. And then I'll be like, oh, this can't be anything.
Oh my
Like this,
gosh,
I
no.
can't do anything with this. And then I'll move on from
I
it.
think that could be a pattern or a like a Pottery Barn could put that on their next sheet set.
Well,
I mean, I
someone tell
love
them.
these. Oh, I love these.
Someone tell them. I'm actually trying now to take these, like these kind of flowers and like actually like paint them on paper. I'm doing that like today, right over there. I've got a big piece of
Cool.
paper and I'm actually like taking it out of my sketchbook, and doing some stuff with it. So that's
Those are
nice.
gorgeous. Okay,
Nice.
so one question uh that I had that now I can't remember what it was, but um what oh, it was returning to the your sketchbooks because you
Mhm.
brought out and you actually talk about this in some of either your newsletter or in your course or like I know I've heard you say this. Maybe it's just even, but I think sometimes maybe people forget to go back. And it is something that
Mhm.
you do. How often do you go back for mining some of that gold
Yeah.
or even just to say, oh, that wasn't as bad as I thought it was?
Yeah. I usually go back if I'm feeling stuck. If I'm having like just like a funky day where I'm just like, like I don't, ugh, like everything's just ugh. I'll sometimes just sit down and flip through my sketchbooks. And that's really helpful. Sometimes like if I'm, maybe I'm working on a book idea or I want to work on a painting or an illustration, I'm like, oh, I did a thing. I remember doing the thing. And then I have to get out like my whole stack of sketchbooks. I start flipping through them. I'm like, where is it? And it's always in the last one. Like every time. Every time. But I would say probably like at least once a month I flip through them. It's just nice to I've found like over the years that like it's nicer for me to like connect with my own art and like
Mm.
scroll through my own art than it is for me to be on Instagram. Like if I find that I'm on like Instagram scrolling for like inspiration or if I'm on Instagram and I'm looking at other people's art and it's making me feel a way that isn't like nice, then I'm like, okay, like you need to go look at your own art. So you need to look at your sketchbooks. I have a folder on my computer where I keep illustrations that I really liked so I can go back and look at those and just sort of like, be connected with what I'm making instead of like, being inundated with
I
like
love that.
everyone else's awesome
I
stuff.
love
So,
that idea. Okay, so then what is next? I'm gonna read off these your links And just so everybody knows, they're always at the top. If you're on YouTube, it's the
Mhm.
top things and the more are all these links. And if you're listening wherever you get your podcast, it's also, you should have been watching. But anyway, but
There were
all
pictures.
these links, yeah, all these links are right at the top. But everybody who's here live is getting the links in the chat. But what's next? So I know you're doing the, hey, let's make picture books.
Mhm.
What else is, so also you authoring, is that another next, or tell us what else is next?
Maybe. That's one of my next is I'm trying to author illustrate some picture books. I'm working with my agent. We came up, I pitched her some ideas. We picked like 3 of them that we really liked, and then I'm working on one of them right now. Um, it's hard. I picked like the I picked the one that I thought was going to be the easiest to write because the words are very simple. It's just a couple words on each page, and woohoo, that is harder than I thought it was going to be. So that's definitely a project that I'm like constantly like picking up and putting down. Like I pick it up for a couple days and then I get to a funky spot and I'm like, okay, just put it down and let it just marinate in your brain. It'll figure itself out. But yeah, I'm working on that. I have the Let's Make Picture Books workshop that's coming up in the fall. And I just had a meeting with a book editor a couple of days ago, and I might be developing a book about like messy, fun art practice.
Ooh.
So we'll see.
So what about the
We'll
abstracts?
see.
So
We'll see.
I mean, I
Okay.
want you to pursue this. I want you to get those things
I
on pottery or crepe bear. Like it
I am
is
going to.
gorgeous.
I'm going to. So I have a separate Instagram account for my abstract practice. It's at SFC Paints. Just because I wanted it to have its own little nook and I wanted to have some accountability. I don't love Instagram any more than anyone else does, but like it's just nice to have like a little internet corner where you can be like, look, I'm doing a thing. Like, here's a place where I can just like tuck it all in there.
Is that
Um,
correct? Did I write SFC paints? Is that,
yeah, I think that's it. There might be an underscore. I don't think so. I don't know.
I'll go
Surely
look.
there's not
It'll
another
it'll
SFC
be in
paints.
there for the,
Surely
it
there's
might
not
just
another
not be the
one.
live people. They'll get the,
Oh, Troy did it. Thank you, Troy.
oh, thank you, Troy.
Um,
Oh, yeah. It's
so
an
yeah,
underscore.
it's I'm gonna do something with it. I've had like almost a year now on and off of like experimenting with like these bold florals and different ways of painting abstracts. And I'm just now kind of figuring out like, okay, this is what I like. These are the colors I like and the transparencies and the layering and all these things. So I'll do something with it. You know, it's like a side project, you know, for right now, but I'm excited about it and it feels really just like it feels really good to be doing this kind of like work that doesn't have to, you know, like kids books, even like as fun as it is, like, you know, a thing has to look like a thing and in abstract it doesn't. So I can draw the weirdest flowers I want. I can draw the weirdest landscapes. I can just smudge paint on pages and it's just it's a relief, honestly. Like it feels like so good. So
But it also
um,
goes to the, so everybody can join your newsletter. And this
mhm.
week, I think in the newsletter was about just this honest stuff about kids' books, picture books, but it also you talk about income streams. And I think that
I
we
do.
do have these side projects, and hopefully
Mhm.
they can, some of them will lead to some things that are um, will bring in some money, but some
Yeah.
things won't. But you have to be trying different things so that
Mhm.
you're diversified, which I love. I love the honesty in the business side that you're sharing, but I also just love the way you draw and I love the way you teach. But I just really love that you're like super honest. But hey, you can't just put all your eggs in the children's book illustrator
I
basket and
wish you
think you're
could. I wish
I
you could. I know.
I wish so too. But I
I
think,
wish you could.
but that's something I really appreciate and admire that you are sharing just even on your website, on your newsletter. And I just want to make sure everybody knows where they can go. If you're listening, you just are like, just give me the details, Diane. The artists with an S,
Mhm.
greenhouse.com. And then
Mhm.
on YouTube, there are 2 different YouTube channels, which I think I only got one, but I'll get the other.
There's just one.
Oh, there is just one. Okay. So
There's just one.
the one channel, it is linked. It's the second link down. It's all these weird letters. I don't know why when I got copied it, it just didn't give me really nice letters. Anyway, so it'll be the second link. And then Instagram, there are 3 Instagrams then, correct? So there's the artist or just artist with an S, again, greenhouse, artist greenhouse, and then Steph Fizer Coleman. And then on Pinterest
SFC
too.
Paints.
Yes. And then S as in Sam or Steph, F as in Fizer, and then Coleman. C
Initials,
and then an
indeed.
underscore. Yeah. Paints with an S at the end there. But also check out her Pinterest. I love because you have a class or a workbook that's about Pinterest as well for artists, which I think is great. I got that. And just, it's nice. I love Pinterest. I use Pinterest. And then you're talking about how we can use it. And I just like Pinterest and we don't give it enough. I don't know.
We don't love Pinterest enough.
I know, but
it does a lot of work for artists.
It does. It really does. So, and on Pinterest, it's just pinterest.com/theartists with an S at the end of artist greenhouse. And Steph, thank you so much. So much.
You.
I loved all the stuff you showed. I still love the pears. I have a pear tree that's just busting out right now. I did not draw as cool a pears, but I drew some pears the other day.
Yay!
I know. So anyway, I appreciate it. Thank you just for the inspiration, for being honest, and I can't wait to have you back. And I just love your sketchbook. So
thank you so much for having me. It was so fun to talk to you.
It was great talking to you, and I'm sorry if I interrupted too much.
I don't think you did at all.
Well, you'll see a theme a little bit in from this week to next week. Next week, I have April Howlett, who is Monkey Mintaka. And she draws a lot of birds. She knew who you were, Steph, and I was like,
work.
So she is next week. She is also going to show you lots of birds, but she also does a lot of landscapes as well and uses a lot of the same tools. But I am excited that we are doing this sketchbook. She uses her sketchbooks differently than Steph, and I'm just thankful that we get to try something. So I hope for all of you that you go out there and that you just try to make some marks this week, even if it's just 5 minutes or 10 minutes while you're brushing your teeth or something, just make some marks because it's so much more fun and it makes our life better. Steph, thank you so much. And I will see all y'all next week.
Thank you.